there comes a moment in every life where we stop and ask, what do I truly stand for? Not what we pretend to stand for on social media. Not what we conveniently believe when it's easy, but when no one is watching, when the spotlight fades. What is the anchor of our character? The truth is, in a world obsessed with noise, performance, and popularity, we're starved for depth. We long for something real, something rooted, something that dares to challenge the current of culture with an unwavering sense of identity and purpose. And that's where the Seventh-day Adventist Church enters the conversation. Not as a relic of the past, not as another religious option on a menu of beliefs, but as a living, breathing movement grounded in principle, driven by mission, and guided by hope. Conviction over convenience is not just a principle, it's a declaration of purpose that defines the core of the Seventh-day Adventist movement. In a world that praises compromise for the sake of popularity and encourages blending in to avoid confrontation, the individuals who shaped this church chose a different path. They refused to settle for shallow beliefs or to adopt watered down truths simply to fit into the expectations of culture. They didn't start with power, privilege, or platforms. They began with courage. The kind of courage that says, even if I stand alone, I will stand. That's the difference between preference and principle. Preference bends when pressure comes. Principle holds. Conviction isn't convenient, and that's the point. It requires sacrifice. It costs reputation. It demands consistency. But it also produces unshakable purpose. And the world desperately needs more of that. The founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church stood in the aftermath of what many called disappointment after the Great Advent Awakening in the 1840s. Yet, instead of abandoning their beliefs when others mocked and misunderstood them, they dug deeper, searched harder, and built a foundation not on fleeting emotion, but on thorough understanding and scripture. That is what conviction looks like. It's a fire that keeps burning even when the winds of doubt howl against it. It's not stubbornness, it's clarity. They didn't cling to tradition for tradition's sake. They were willing to change everything except the truth. And truth, once it's understood and lived out with sincerity, becomes the most powerful motivator a human being can possess. When you look at movements that last, legacies that inspire and individuals who change the course of history, there's always one common trait: conviction, not perfection, not talent, not wealth, just raw, unwavering, focused belief in something bigger than themselves. That belief acts as a compass. It directs every choice. It influences every action. And when that belief is anchored in truth, it doesn't just protect a person from compromise. It elevates them above it. The Seventh-day Adventist Church teaches, both through doctrine and example, that you don't have to follow the crowd to lead. In fact, leadership often begins the moment you choose to step away from the crowd and walk the narrow path that no one else dares to travel. That kind of living doesn't come from emotion. It comes from intention. It requires deliberate thought, discipline, and the willingness to endure discomfort. When others chose silence, they spoke up. When others chose convenience, they chose the cost of discipleship. And while the world pushed them to dilute their message, they refined it instead. Their impact didn't come from adapting to the world, but from challenging it with compassion, with intelligence, with unwavering truth. Conviction gave them a reason to persist, a framework to grow, and a mission to serve. And that mission was never built on being comfortable or liked. It was built on the belief that if something is worth living for, then it's also worth standing for. Even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when it costs everything they have. The concept of rest in today's hyper-connected, overworked, and emotionally drained world is often misunderstood, neglected, or even ridiculed. We are living in a culture that glorifies exhaustion, idolizes business, and treats stillness as laziness. The grind never stops, and success is often measured by how fast you can run, how many hours you can sacrifice, and how much of yourself you can burn out for a goal you barely understand. But the Seventh-day Adventist Church offers a revolutionary alternative to that mindset. Their belief in the Sabbath, the seventh day of the week as a sacred time of rest, is not just a religious doctrine. It is a bold, counter-cultural protest against the addiction to constant productivity. It's a reminder that we were never created to live as machines, but as human beings with souls, emotions, and limits that deserve respect. In a world where people are drowning in anxiety and losing their identities in endless tasks, the Sabbath stands as a lighthouse, a sacred space in time designed to reconnect us with what truly matters. It is a rhythm of life that pushes back against the chaos and reminds us that we are more than what we produce. The Sabbath says, you are not defined by your resume, your deadlines, or your achievements. You are defined by your Creator, and He values you enough to command rest, not as a burden, but as a blessing. That kind of rest isn't passive. It's restorative. It's intentional. It's transformative. It's the kind of rest that doesn't just recharge your body, but realigns your spirit. For the Seventh-day Adventist believer, the Sabbath is sacred not because it is a rule, but because it is a gift. It's an opportunity to pause and realign your heart with purpose. It's a time to unplug from the noise of society and reconnect with your family, your faith, and your own soul worth. It's a declaration that your life is not owned by the pressures of the market, the demands of your job, or the expectations of others. It's owned by a higher calling, one that values your well-being, your peace, and your spiritual health above your productivity. This belief isn't just symbolic. It has real impact. Studies have shown that communities who embrace Sabbath rest, particularly Adventists who practice it consistently, have better mental health, longer lifespans, and stronger relational bonds. But beyond the science is something even more powerful. The sense of identity and intentionality it brings. To rest is to resist. It's to say, I will not be consumed by the hurry. I will not be reduced to my output. I will take this time to remember who I am, who I'm becoming. The Adventist Sabbath challenges the pace of modern life and invites people into a rhythm that restores rather than depletes. It creates space for reflection, joy, stillness, and connection. It invites people to breathe again, to feel again, and to return to the world with greater clarity, peace, and purpose. It's not about doing less. It's about living better, fuller, deeper. With intention and sacred rhythm, health, in its truest and most transformative sense, is far more than a fleeting resolution or a short-term fitness goal. It is a lifestyle, a mindset, a way of honoring the body as a sacred gift. The Seventh-day Adventist Church doesn't merely promote health as a recommendation. It treats it as a divine responsibility. Their approach to health is holistic, rooted not in the latest trends, but in timeless principles that connect the body, mind, and spirit. In a society where illness is normalized, where fast food is cheaper than clean living, and where people are constantly medicating symptoms instead of addressing causes, this message is not only radical, it's life-saving. The Adventist health message is not restrictive, it's liberating. It doesn't say no to pleasure. It says yes to purpose, longevity, and vibrant living. What makes their approach different is that it is grounded in belief, not vanity. It's not about chasing an image. It's about preserving a vessel. The Adventist lifestyle teaches that our bodies are temples. Not temples to worship, but temples through which we serve, think, lead, love, and impact the world around us. When you believe your body is sacred, you treat it with care, not abuse. You fuel it with nutrition, not poison. You build it with discipline, not neglect. You rest it with wisdom, not burnout. That mindset changes everything because it creates a foundation where personal responsibility becomes a spiritual practice. This is not theoretical. Adventists have become some of the longest living people on the planet, particularly in communities like Loma Linda, California, recognized as a blue zone for its exceptionally high life expectancy. But this isn't luck. It's lifestyle. It's the result of consistent habits, plant-based eating, regular exercise, clean living, balanced work, and rest, and strong social and spiritual support systems. These aren't temporary fixes. They are lifelong commitments built on the understanding that how we live today determines the quality of the life we have tomorrow. And that quality isn't measured only by years, but by the energy, clarity, and vitality we bring into each day. Their view of health is also deeply missional. It's not selfish. It's service-oriented. A healthy person has more energy to help others, more clarity to make wise decisions, and more strength to persevere in their calling. Adventists build hospitals, run clinics, lead wellness initiatives, and educate communities because they believe healing is part of their divine mission. They don't just talk about compassion. They live it through prevention, care, and education. Their hospitals around the world are not monuments to religion. They are havens of hope for people regardless of their background, beliefs, or circumstances. And at the core of this is a simple but powerful idea that caring for your health is not a side pursuit. It's part of your purpose. In a culture that normalizes burnout, glorifies excess, and profits from addiction, choosing a life of health is an act of courage. It's a daily decision to rise above the average, to protect your potential, and to respect the life you've been given. Living for legacy instead of popularity requires an entirely different mindset. One that refuses to be swayed by temporary applause or public opinion. In a world where likes, shares, and followers are treated as the new currency of success, the Seventh-day Adventist Church calls its people to something deeper, something enduring. Legacy is not built in moments of hype, but in years of consistency. It's not about being seen. It's about doing what matters, whether anyone is watching or not. This is a movement that has always been less concerned with being trendy and more committed to being timeless. It doesn't exist to entertain or to conform to what culture demands. It exists to make an impact, to serve with purpose, and to live with eternity in mind. That kind of focus builds a foundation no storm can shake, because it's not built on attention. It's built on mission. From the beginning, Adventists chose substance over spotlight. They built institutions of learning, healthcare, and humanitarian aid, not to show off, but to serve. They didn't clamor for recognition. They let their actions speak. They believed that true influence is quiet, faithful, and relentless. It's in the teacher who inspires generations without a headline. It's in the nurse who brings healing in silence. It's in the missionary who gives up comfort to bring hope to the forgotten corners of the world. That is what legacy looks like. Impact that outlives applause. In a culture that celebrates overnight fame, Adventists invest in long-term transformation. And they do it because they're guided by a vision that stretches beyond this lifetime. The strength of legacy is that it doesn't depend on circumstances. It's anchored in values that don't shift with time. Adventists are trained to see their lives as part of a bigger picture. A story that began long before them and will continue long after them. They understand that how you live today will echo in the hearts of your children, your community, and even people you'll never meet. Every decision matters. Every act of integrity counts. Every small sacrifice builds something that cannot be taken away. And while popularity fades with the trends, legacy grows stronger with time because it is watered by consistency, routed in truth, and fueled by purpose. Adventists also model that legacy is not reserved for the powerful or the wealthy. It is available to anyone who chooses to live intentionally. You don't need a title to make a difference. You don't need a platform to lead. You need clarity about what you stand for and the courage to live by it day after day. That's what sets them apart. While others build empires of image, they build communities of service. While others chase recognition, they quietly create change. Their work in education, health, relief, and advocacy is not driven by ego, but by calling. And that calling is clear: to serve the world in a way that reflects the character of Christ, not just in sermons, but in action. A clarity in a confused world is not just refreshing, it's revolutionary. In a time where truth is often diluted, redefined, or dismissed entirely, the Seventh-day Adventist Church stands as a voice of consistency, offering a worldview that doesn't shift with trends, but stays rooted in timeless principles. We are living in an age of noise, endless opinions, contradictions, and philosophies that promise freedom, but often leave people more lost than ever. Confusion is now normal. People question everything and believe nothing. They hunger for something real, something they can build their life on without fear of it changing tomorrow. That's where clarity becomes power. It cuts through the fog and says, "This is the way. Walk in it." The Adventist message doesn't dance around the truth. It declares it with love and boldness, offering direction in a world paralyzed by indecision. This clarity is not harsh, it's healing. It doesn't come from arrogance, but from deep study, prayer, and commitment to understanding what is right, not just what is popular. The doctrines taught by the Seventh-day Adventist Church are not randomly assembled ideas. They are a carefully studied, scripture-based blueprint for living a purposeful life. In a world where spirituality is often reduced to feelings, the Adventist perspective brings a clear framework for understanding history, human purpose, morality, and destiny. It connects the dots, making sense of the chaos and giving people a map when they feel spiritually lost. The beauty of this clarity is that it doesn't isolate. It invites. It challenges the heart and the mind. It says, worth. You don't have to wander through life guessing why you exist. The Adventist Worldview gives people tools to live intentionally and make sense of the world around them. From the prophetic insights in Scripture to the practical teachings on lifestyle and character, it provides a structure that helps people thrive, not just survive. And that structure doesn't cage people. It frees them. When you know what matters, you stop wasting your life on what doesn't. When you understand truth, you stop chasing every new idea that leaves you empty. That's the power of clarity. It gives you focus, peace, and strength. The Adventist church also teaches that clarity is not just about having the right answers. It's about asking the right questions. It encourages deep thinking, honest wrestling, and the pursuit of truth, even when it's uncomfortable. That's what makes their clarity so compelling. It's not blind belief. It's belief born out of reason, revelation, and reflection. This is not about controlling minds. It's about liberating them from confusion and leading them into conviction. And when you have conviction, you can stand firm even when everything around you is falling apart. You can walk forward when the path is narrow because you're not relying on your emotions. You're walking with understanding. In a world filled with spiritual vagueness and moral gray areas, the Adventist message brings bold definitions. It says right is still right, wrong is still wrong, purpose still exists, the future still matters, and we are not accidents drifting through existence. We are created beings with a calling. Courage to live like Christ is not a soft, sentimental ideal. It is a radical, disruptive, and deeply personal commitment to a way of life that runs against the grain of everything this world glorifies. In a time when many use the name of Jesus as a label rather than a lifestyle, the Seventh-day Adventist Church calls its people to embody his character in action, not just in word. This is not about shallow religion or performance-based faith. This is about transformation. It is about choosing compassion when cruelty is easier. Choosing truth when compromise is more profitable. And choosing sacrifice when comfort is more convenient. Living like Christ is not a slogan. It is a daily choice to stand in the margins, to speak for the voiceless, to serve the broken, and to shine light in places that are wrapped in darkness. The life of Christ was not marked by applause, wealth, or privilege. It was marked by mission. He healed the outcasts, confronted corruption, challenged the religious elite, and comforted the rejected. He did not come to blend in. He came to redefine what it means to be human. To live like him today requires bravery because it means stepping away from the crowd, living with integrity when no one else does, and refusing to be bought by the promises of this world. The Adventist church teaches that faith must be active. It must reflect the life and spirit of Jesus in real, tangible ways. Through how we treat people, how we live, how we love, and how we respond to a world that constantly tests our convictions. This kind of courage cannot be borrowed. It must be built. It comes from deep relationship with God, from daily surrender, and from the constant practice of choosing principle over pressure. Adventists believe that Christ's example is not unreachable. It's the blueprint. His humility is not weakness. It's power under control. His obedience is not restriction. It's freedom with direction. His love is not passive. It's fierce, focused, and fearless. To live like him means to carry that same fire. Not a fire that destroys, but a fire that ignites hope, justice, and grace wherever you go. Adventists don't just admire Jesus. They seek to reflect him. This commitment fuels their work in education, healthcare, humanitarian aid, and community development. It's why they go to hard places, why they stand for unpopular truths, and why they pour their lives into serving others without expecting applause in return. Christ's life was defined by selflessness, and that spirit continues through people who choose to follow his path. It's not always easy, and it's rarely popular, but it's always worth it. The courage to live like Christ is what separates performative faith from authentic discipleship. It's what transforms belief into a living testimony. And it requires not just spiritual passion, but emotional strength, mental discipline, and the willingness to be shaped by something greater than self-interest. When everything around you says to live for yourself, when society screams that comfort is king and compromise is clever, choosing to live like Christ is an act of rebellion against the ordinary. It's choosing the narrow road, not because it's easy, but because it leads somewhere that matters. It's refusing to water down your values to fit into a world that doesn't know its own. It's standing up when others sit down, speaking truth when silence feels safer, and choosing love, not the feel-good version, but the selfless, bold, and sacrificial kind that changes people from the inside out